Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
It's Thursday, November 9th, 2023. I'm Reese Colbert, sitting in for Roland, who is having dinner with the Vice President. Here's what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. A federal jury convicts former Baltimore State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby of 2 counts of perjury. West Virginian Senator Joe Manchin says he is not retiring. He is not seeking re-election. We'll discuss what this means for 2024. We'll have a recap of the 3rd Republican debate. The sole black candidate says the GOP is gaining black voters, and Chris Christie breaks down what pro-life should mean. The Supreme Court heard arguments this week about the federal ban on alleged domestic abusers possessing firearms. We'll talk to a gun violence prevention advocate and a domestic violence advocate about what could happen if the court decides to reverse the ban. The Black Alabama riverboat co-captain who was attacked on August 5th is facing assault charges. And Israel agreed to a 4-hour ceasefire to allow people to get to safety in Gaza. We'll talk to a national security and foreign policy expert to give us the latest on the war. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
A Maryland federal jury convicts Baltimore's former top prosecutor, Marilyn Mosby. Mosby was found guilty of 2 counts of perjury. The jury found she did lie about her finances to withdraw money from her city retirement account under a program designed to help people struggling financially during the coronavirus pandemic. Prosecutors said she falsely claimed to suffer from financial hardships to access $90,000 from retirement funds that she later used to buy 2 homes in Florida. Mosby has maintained her innocence. A reporter tried to get a comment from Mosby as she exited the courthouse.
Mosby is coming out right now. Here we go, here we go. Let's see if she has any comment.
Mr. Whiter, do you have any comment?
Any comment?
No comment? Any comment? Do you plan to appeal this?
What do you want to say to the people of Baltimore? Anything?
I'm blessed. I have nothing else to say.
Ms. Mosby, were you surprised by the verdict?
Ms. Mosby, do you plan to appeal this ruling?
Mr. White,
any reaction at all?
This seems upsetting.
You can see there.
Let's go to our panel with this breaking news. Lauren Victoria Burke from Black Press USA. Dr. Carr will be joining us shortly, as well as Teresa Lundy, principal and founder of TML Communications in Philadelphia. Hey, y'all. Let me tell you something. They got another one of our black politicians, child, on this doggone finance fraud stuff. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is up there in Manhattan acting a plumb fool, but not facing any kind of criminal liability. Lauren, I'll go to you first. What is your reaction to this Marilyn Mosby verdict?
Sorry, everybody. My reaction is similar to what you just said. We see a lot of black elected officials getting prosecuted. In this case, this prosecution started with a prosecutor named Leo Wise, who has a long history and an uncanny knack for prosecuting black elected officials that goes all the way back to when he was in the Office of Congressional Ethics, prosecuting an unusually high number of black members of Congress. He's not on the case anymore, but still, this was a case that involved Marilyn Mosby effectively taking out her own money from an account. I'm not sure why that would reach the level that this has reached now. Of course, she's now getting hit with a perjury charge. That's interesting. I mean, I think with all the things that are going on in Baltimore, you would think that there'd be other things that prosecutors would be focused on. And I have to say, when we look at a lot of the black female prosecutors who have been in the spotlight over the last few years, and she's been one of them, there's been some interesting things that have happened to them. Rachel Rollins comes to mind. I don't know. I'm not a big believer in coincidence when I see black elected officials being prosecuted. I'm just not. We see on the blue-collar level a disproportionate prosecution of black people. There's no reason we wouldn't see it on the white-collar level. So I reserve judgment, and I will read the case, but I feel a sense of suspicion, quite frankly.
I think that's very reasonable. I mean, to your point, she was not allowed to make the case that it was her own money that was coming from the retirement fund. The prosecutor suggested that this still belonged to the city, and that's why she committed perjury by trying to get access to it. But Teresa, to Lauren's point, a lot of prosecutors are under the spotlight, especially if you're a Baltimore politician. They love to go after black Baltimore politicians. Is this one of those cases where, knowing that spotlight, she should have been a little bit more making sure that she had her T's crossed and her I's dotted? What do you think?
I think any elected official, especially African Americans, we all know we're going to be under the spotlight, under the gun, daily. So it is really up to us to make sure we hire the right consultants and just to make sure that, we are following the law to the T. I think there is likely a lot of misinformed information that is not released to the public. But right now, we're just seeing the headline as in, Marilyn Mosby convicted, and we're not, unless you're reading, it says perjury. And so, for her, she might have thought she was telling the truth, or, it could have been a half truth. But whatever it might have been, I think there was just some miseducation on some of the finance laws, which can be complex. I know here in PA, if you're running for a local office and then you decide to run for Congress, it can get very difficult if you don't have the right consultants or if you're not reading some of the audited information for the finance report yourself. So it definitely can get complicated, but the investment on the back end is probably the most helpful, especially so you don't get into these type of situations.
Right. That's a good point. I mean, I know, listen, most of us have many of us, I shouldn't say many of us have 401ks. We have retirement accounts. At some point or another, we've taken money out. And so that tends to be the kind of thing where you don't necessarily expect to have to hire accountants and lawyers and things to get access to. One of the interesting parts about this, though, because it is perjury, you do have to approve intent. And I wonder, Lauren, I'm going to go to you on this, if the fact that she's a black woman gives her less of the benefit of the doubt. We have seen other black politicians who have been targeted with prosecution related to finances. Andrew Gillum is somebody who comes to mind, and he actually did not get convicted. Do you think that her being a black woman played even more of a role in this case and the outcome of this case?
Not in this particular case. I think they like to go after black people in power. I think black people in power, whether they be male or female, are under a microscope. It just does so happen that we have a historic sort of group of black women prosecutors, though, who are out there on the scene right now, sort of coming of age. Certainly Fannie Willis is. But Marilyn Mosby was one of those prosecutors in a major city. But when I think about just historically, and someone had done a book on this, on black elected officials being prosecuted. He's a Maryland professor. I'm sorry I don't have his name. On black elected officials being prosecuted. And of course, most of his cases are men because it was mostly male elected officials in office when he wrote the book. But Brian Benjamin is a pretty good recent example. So is Andrew Gillum. Andrew Gillum, let's be real. The big announcement, the drama, all the counts that are being announced, and you saw the Brian Benjamin presser, the counts and the drama, and we've got them. We've got charts and graphics and all this, and the entire case totally fell apart. It was a big flop, a big nothing burger, and nothing came of it. So we have to sort of wait, to me, for details. Even when they get prosecuted, I'm like waiting for details, even when there's a conviction. So I'm a little bit, again, I'm very suspicious.
Now, Brian Benjamin, refresh my recollection, he was the lieutenant governor, right? And he ended up having to resign as a result. And then, to your point, it was a big nothing burger. Do I have that right?
That's right. The lieutenant governor of New York, and could have been the governor of New York, because Andrew Cuomo then got in trouble not too long. I mean, to me, it's sort of like I just feel like when black elected officials get prosecuted, we need to pay special attention. I remember when Shaka Fatah got prosecuted. He was serving on the very powerful money committee in Congress. To this day, nobody can articulate to me exactly what he did that was wrong. He got prosecuted and went to jail. And when you get these cases where nobody can articulate in a plain sentence what happened, I'm suspicious. I've read his case and I still didn't understand it. I'm just saying, given the history of our country, I'm suspicious of many of these prosecutions.
I mean, me too, and I'm also suspicious that it's only black people out here doing this stuff, because we ain't even in that high numbers, and yet it seems to be that the prosecutions always skew towards the black. But Teresa,
right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you're right, because if we really look at the history, going to Lauren's point, black elected officials who have substantial power that is governing over dollars and cents of taxpayers and maybe looking like they have a future to move up in public office, the scrutiny gets higher with any position that you get in. Look, and I know you mentioned Congressman Fatah, but he's been in, Congress for over 20-something years. He earned that position. And so, even with that case, because obviously it was out of Philadelphia, just knowing some of the ins and outs of it, it was almost like, they were looking for a degree of issue. And so when you're able to find one where you start to look 10 and 15 years back into elected officials, you for whatever, the target is there. And so it really, if we kind of got to go back to basics when you start running for public office, is really taking care of your back end so it protects you and secures you in the future, so we don't have these type of issues where, one, you're getting perjured on the stand because of maybe some information you did not know was true or was not. But at the end of the day, Marilyn Mosby took her money and tried to use it for her campaign to make sure that she can get elected without asking the taxpayer for, those who wanted to support her for small dollar donations.
Well, technically she was using it to buy a house, but to your point, I look at retirement money as my money, so I would have been shocked as all hell if somebody told me that I was committing a crime, regardless of what I said on somebody's forms, getting my own money that I contributed. I got to bring in our man, Dr. Carr, Department of Afro-American Studies at Howard University. The reason why I want to come to you, Dr. Carr, is because in addition to the fact that black politicians are mostly targeted when it comes to these kind of financial prosecutions, they find very few allies when they are under the gun. I mean, just last week, I don't know if you saw Kwame Kilpatrick putting President Obama on blast, talking about how we used to be homies, but you left me hanging when I was in jail. And I'm not saying that President Obama should have done anything different. I don't know who could have came to Marilyn Mosby's aid here, but talk a little bit, if you have anything to chime in on that issue of kind of how when you get caught up in these, you just on your own on this one.
About my friend and colleague Derek Musgrove, who wrote a whole book on this in terms of the selective persecution, in fact, of black elected officials. This isn't about their politics. This isn't about anything other than the fact that when it comes to, quote unquote, the law in this country, it's selective prosecution. Perhaps if Marilyn Mosby had said something nice about Donald Trump or ran into him somewhere in the streets and said, "Oh, I like your tie," he would have intervened or something like that. But the simple fact of the matter is that, black politicians, the higher up the food chain you go, the more timid they are. That's simply the simple fact. It's a simple fact of the matter. Sure, Kwame Kilpatrick, the hip hop mayor of Detroit, yeah, he got in trouble, and some of it his own doing, of course.
Right.
But he's not a white man.
Yeah.
And Marilyn Mosby, this is completely outsized. It's absurd. Black people think you can somehow demonstrate to this society that somehow you are cleaner than average by adhering to the rule of law. That's simply not the case. This is a political prosecution.
Right.
You're trying to crucify Marilyn Mosby. And of course, Barack Obama wasn't going to do anything. What do y'all expect Barack Obama to do? He's a creature of the political system. He's not going to intervene. We're still paying the bill for him being president 2 times. And meanwhile, he's off with his wife making $1 billion with Netflix, and we're stuck with the bill called Donald Trump and everything else. Marilyn Mosby was politically crucified today, and there's nothing else to say about it.
Well, I want to keep staying with you a little bit longer because you do have the law expertise here. She still has another case. Now, the date hasn't been set around charges of mortgage fraud. And she chose not to go to testify in this case, which is a very short actual trial, because there were threats about her being able to be, whatever she said, potentially being used to bring more charges to her. What do you think is next for Marilyn Mosby after this perjury conviction and with the additional charges she's facing?
I have no idea. Again, I would think that, her lawyers and, of course, our brother Scott, who they were able to get up out the paint at the threat of trying to snatch his license behind some BS, would be much better positioned to talk about that. But will she try to negotiate a plea? I mean, I would think, I'm thinking about my friends who are practicing attorneys who may advise her to try to do that. I mean, again, don't subject yourself to a bench trial or a jury trial where these folk think somehow they are upholding the rule of law by applying rules to you that aren't applied evenly across the board. I mean, I suspect she probably has some legal advice that might be like, see, can you negotiate a plea and so that you don't have to face this type of situation again. But quite frankly, I think I'm probably as much at a loss as what she's going to do now in that case as anybody else who's just kind of observing. Right.
Well, I hope for the best for her, because she's facing more time in jail than the Freddie Gray killers. Exactly. And anybody else that she tried to bring to justice in that and all of the other cases that she tried. Some of them, no, she was not doing what she was supposed to do. She was doing some overzealous prosecution. So I ain't saying she's totally innocent, but on this one, it definitely seems like she is getting a raw deal. But we're going to head to a break. This is Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
I'm Dee Barnes, and next on The Frequency, we have griot, performance artist and author, writer, singer, and composer, Queen Mother Nana Camille Yarborough. Please join us for an incredible conversation about knowledge, wisdom, and power of the elders.
I'm a perception changer. You're a rearranger. You're a mind evolver and a problem solver. You're a beast eater, a soul excreter, a void filler, and a bile spiller. You are a thought former, a plan former, a power orchestrator, and a tongue translator.
Right here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Hello, I'm Paula J. Parker. Truly proud of the Proud Family, louder and prouder on Disney+. And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin made it clear he is not running for re-election in 2024. Here's the announcement he put out on social media.
I got into politics because of an argument I had 40 years ago with my dad. John Manchin owned a furniture store in Farmington, West Virginia, a small coal mining town of hardworking people. And one day our local state representative came in and asked Dad for a favor, saying, "You owe me for all the things I've done for your little town." When the man left, I turned to my dad and said, "Now wait a minute, isn't helping Farmington that man's job?" That moment defined the difference between self-service and public service. When I told my dad that I was going to run for office, he said, "Oh, Joe, politics is a bad business. I'm telling you right now, stay out of it." I didn't disagree that often with my father, but that time I did. I reminded him of the famous line from President John F. Kennedy's inaugural address: "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." I was 13 when I first heard it, and I'm still inspired today by it. My family were devoted Catholics who immigrated from Italy and Czechoslovakia. So to us, President Kennedy was held in the highest regard, and I knew President Kennedy's words would sway my dad. It took him about a minute, but my dad said that he would support me running if I made a vow to serve all the people, friend or foe, and not just myself. That promise made to my dad all those years ago has been my guiding light. I've never cared about where good ideas came from, and I never blame one side for creating a problem, nor believed that only one side could fix them. When America is at her best, we get things done by putting country before party, working across the aisle, and finding common ground. Many times, this approach has landed me in hot water, but the fight to unite has been well worth it. Today, West Virginia is attracting more investment, opportunity, and jobs than it has in decades. Here at home and across the country, we are building more roads, bridges, manufacturing plants, and energy infrastructure than almost any time in America's history. After months of deliberation and long conversation with my family, I believe in my heart of hearts that I have accomplished what I set out to do for West Virginia. I have made one of the toughest decisions of my life and decided that I will not be running for re-election to the United States Senate. But what I will be doing is traveling the country and speaking out to see if there is an interest in creating a movement to mobilize the middle and bring Americans together. To the West Virginians who have put their trust in me and fought side by side to make our state better, it has been my honor of my life to serve you. Thank you. Every incentive in Washington is designed to make our politics extreme. The growing divide between Democrats and Republicans is paralyzing Congress and worsening our nation's problems. The majority of Americans are just plain worn out. Our economy is not working for many Americans, from the rising cost of food and fuel and everything in between. We have a border crisis with illegal drugs entering our country and killing Americans every day. Our national debt is out of control, and Americans don't feel safe, even in their own communities. We are providing critical aid to two of our allies, fighting wars for their survival, and we must prevent being pulled into a major war ourselves. These are not Republican or Democratic challenges. These are American challenges. They affect every one of us, and we need to face them together. I know our country isn't as divided as Washington wants us to believe. We share common values of family, freedom, democracy, dignity, and a belief that together we can overcome any challenge. We need to take back America and not let this divisive hatred further pull us apart. Public service has and continues to drive me every day. That is the vow that I made to my father over 40 years ago, and I intend to keep that vow until my dying day. May God bless America, the great state of West Virginia, and each and every one of you.
Manchin has been the only Democrat elected to statewide office in West Virginia. This allows Republicans to pick up a seat in the heavily GOP state. Here is a spoiler alert. Maserati Mansion. Ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis. Don't nobody have no kind of appetite for no 76-year-old man talking about he is somewhere in the middle when you are definitely more so on the radical conservative side of what you're trying to call Democrat, but we don't believe you. So you can save the whole tour. Ain't nobody coming to see you, Otis. And buy as she, don't let the good Lord hit you or the good Lord split you, because don't nobody care about you leaving the doggone Senate. But what I'm trying to figure out is who is paying you to embark on this little tour, because I know don't nobody think you can win. I know don't nobody think that you could beat Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Lauren, I'm gonna start with you. What do you think is really behind this push by Joe Manchin to look for people who are so-called looking at the middle?
There's probably some corporate actor behind there that has something to do with the coal industry, knowing Manchin. I mean, everything with him is the coal industry and stopping renewable energy, stopping anything that would assist with climate change. I mean, that's been his entire career. That's what he cares about. I love this idea that somehow we need, Joe Manchin to lead us through the storm and to a more moderate America. It is completely ridiculous. It does give the Democratic Party a huge challenge with regard to winning that seat, which is probably not going to happen, quite frankly. So they're going to have to look elsewhere on the map. But this idea that, I love the part in there about the divisive hatred in our country or something, and then you don't mention Donald Trump. You don't have the guts in the moment that you're resigning, you're not resigning, but retiring, announcing that you're not running for re-election. You don't have the guts to mention Donald Trump. Now, we have seen people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Robert De Niro get on social media and talk about politics and talk about Donald Trump and talk about fascism. These are movie actors. Yeah. Okay. Of course, Schwarzenegger was the governor of California. They have the guts to say it, but a United States senator can't say it. I mean, you got to be kidding me with this guy. It is really interesting, though, that he thinks he's the hero. He's going to save us. Okay, we'll see. Yeah, he thinks he's the hero, but he's more like the villain because he's the one who stood in the way of the child tax credit being extended. Him, along with Sinema, stood in the way of, changing the filibuster so that we could pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, pass a number of bills. And so, yeah, he's definitely not the hero of anybody's story, except for in his own head. Teresa, this is, like I said, the person that blocked the child tax credit. What exactly does Joe Manchin think that he is moderate in, other than not agreeing with everything that the Democrats are trying to do?
I think that is, that's a great question, but I think that's also the new definition of what moderate is. Right now, we have, obviously the progressive movement. We have, organizations called No Labels, so everybody's trying to figure out where they fit in, because it looks like, Democrats are not unified, but we just had a past election where it looks like we're absolutely energized, we're actually absolutely recharged in battleground states. And so I think there's, a moment here for Joe Manchin, to think like everybody else is thinking. President Joe Biden is in his 80s. And these folks who have served in public service for decades are now seeing, this is kind of like their last will and testament on their way out the door in public service. But we cannot get confused. And I think when Joe Manchin does decide, if he is deciding to go to seek higher office, I think that'll be an interesting conversation, because if we start looking at the record does say you're not for working people. The record does say that when it was time for us to fix civil rights and also protect our rights, Joe Manchin wasn't at the table. If anything, he was the individual that stood against those protections. And I think, people, once that record is probably, just rehashed, we'll start also getting an understanding that, he's not the one that we should be selecting for any other office. But we hope he does take, the necessary break he needs to really think about his actions. Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not ageist or anything, but 76 ain't no spring chicken either. That's what Joe Manchin is. So I don't have a problem with Joe Biden being 80, whoever being whatever age, but I always think it's interesting when the age conversation happens with a whole bunch of other old people trying to run. Jill Stein just announced today that she's running. She's 73. I'm not saying 73 is as old as 80, because, I mean, just numerically it's not. But we're not talking about, somebody in their 30s or 40s, Pete Buttigieg age or AOC's age running for president. We talk about a bunch of septuagenarians still trying to get out there and talk about they're going to be the change that Joe Biden isn't, I guess. Dr. Carr, what's your reaction to Maserati Manchin talking about he's not running, but he's not sitting down somewhere either?
That's right. I mean, well, I think it's the same as Teresa's and as Lauren's and as yours, Reese. Joe Manchin is the definition of a slick politician. He's going to be just fine. In a Republican administration, he'll be given a cabinet post or an ambassadorship. Maybe they'll make him Secretary of Energy so he can get his coal buddies together, because, there's a real war going on between the energy companies now. You see Chevron and Exxon and BP, the European oil companies energy companies trying to go around and deal with renewables, while some of these others here in the U.S. are trying to retrench and double down on coal and oil. Well, cosplay coal miner is backed by billionaires. Joe Manchin is going to run for president. But the problem we have, of course, is that black folk who have made the involuntary sacrifice since they snatched us into this criminal enterprise are being set up for another round of pain. We see Biden's numbers. I mean, these polls don't mean much, but we do have, you mentioned Jill Stein in the four-way, the CNN poll that we all saw, saying that Trump beats Biden, but in a four-way race, how in the hell is 16% of the people say they'll vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and 4% for Cornel West? Well, they have to get on the ballot. But ultimately, Jill Stein, if she's the Green Party candidate, since Cornel couldn't stand still long enough to understand you need a party apparatus to get on the ballot, Jill Stein jumps in, and who knows? I guess what I'm saying is ultimately Joe Manchin is put his hand up, backed by all the billionaires necessary, to say, I will be the spoiler.
Yeah.
I'll be one. What's in it for me? If the Democrats win, well, what the hell? We'll find some lobbyist job for you. And if the white nationalists get in, we'll make you put you in the cabinet, or we'll give you an ambassadorship. This is all about what it's always been about with Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin.
I did not see that, but I 100% agree with you. Lauren, Teresa mentioned the No Labels Party. Do you think that they factor into this already? I've been hearing rumblings about it, nothing official. But, I mean, unlike the Green Party, which, as Dr. Carr mentioned, Dr. West jumped off maybe too soon. He probably didn't see this Israel-Gaza stuff popping off and the advantage he would get, being the Green Party ticket. But you need infrastructure. You can't vote for somebody that's not on the ballot. And even the Green Party has not managed to get on the ballot in all the entire electoral college. But when you have unlimited billionaires backing a fake party or No Labels Party, that could potentially pose a much bigger spoiler challenge now. Like I said, I don't know if that's what he's involved in, but could you see somebody like No Labels trying to scoop up Joe Manchin since he has an appetite for something in 2024?
Yeah, he has the appetite for attention. So anything that will get him attention, he'll do it. That's one of the reasons why he's always holding out his vote, to stop things like the child tax credit or whatever it is that middle class and lower middle class Americans need. I think this third party stuff is beyond crazy. We're looking into the face of losing our entire democracy next year with this battle between Donald Trump and everybody else, and you want to talk to me about, people are talking about the Green Party and this and that. We saw what happened in 2016. I'm not sure why we need a replay of that. And all this Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and now this jazz that we're hearing, I'm deeply suspicious of any sort of corporate or billionaire-related funding. What is that about? It comes down to two major political parties. And I know a lot of people want, something else, and it does feel like we should have something else. We see some of the decisions that get made, certainly. But this is a really bad time to be talking about a third party when you have Donald Trump on the horizon looking as if he could possibly get back into office. And everybody understands what that means and the threats that he is making openly, right out onto the air. So I'm not buying into any of this No Label stuff or third party or any of that. And the fact that Manchin is involved in it makes me even more suspicious because he has stood for nothing other than the coal industry. Yeah. So give me a break. In one of the states that's one of our poorest states in this country, by the way. Yeah. So you're not from some state that the highway is paved with gold. This is West Virginia. So I'm not sure why he thinks he's fooling anybody, but I'm not really down with the third party thing. Yeah. At all.
I don't know why he's waving a mission accomplished flag when they still got black lungs down there. They still got low health care, poverty, all kind of mess. But apparently for him, it's mission accomplished. So we'll be right back with Roland Martin Unfiltered. After this break, you're watching the Black Star Network.
Talk about blackness and what happens in black culture. We're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Coles.
Hey, I'm Donnie Simpson.
Yo, it's your man Deion Cole from Blackish, and you watch
Roland Martin, Unfiltered.
Thousands have died and thousands more have been injured since the militant group Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel on October 7th. Israel claims it has destroyed 130 Hamas tunnel shafts amid an expansion of its ground operation in Gaza. The White House says Israel will cease fire for 4 hours in Gaza each day to allow people to get to safer locations. The war has caused mass displacement and severe food, water, fuel, and medical supply shortages. National security and foreign policy expert Asha Castleberry Hernandez joins me to explain this 4-hour window. Hey, Asha, how are you?
Good evening. Nice to see you, Reese.
Nice to see you. Okay, listen, this ain't gonna be no softball because I have been so incredibly disturbed by the carnage that we have been witnessing in Gaza. Obviously, it goes without saying that the attack on Israel was heinous as well. But we've had 30 days of nonstop attacks on the area of Gaza where Palestinians have been displaced. Now this 4-hour window has been announced. Can you tell the viewers a little bit more details about the 4 hours? Because initially it might sound like there's a 4-hour stoppage across the entire region when, from what I read, Israel plans to announce certain neighborhoods will get a 4-hour reprieve with a couple hours notice, and it will be different neighborhoods each day. So can you explain like the specifics about this 4-hour window?
Yes. So the White House or President Biden has been pretty much negotiating for the 4-hour window, and the 4-hour window is tailored towards specific communities or areas as a way to provide humanitarian assistance, and in the meantime also continue to negotiate hostage affairs. So the 4-hour window also is a reflection of a middle ground as far as the negotiations where the Israelis still want to continue their counteroffensive, but at the same time, the United States, along with many other countries, want to continue providing humanitarian support as well as continue with the hostage affairs. So it's a middle ground. In my opinion, in terms of the delay of it, as far as 4 hours, it's not enough to continue to negotiate hostage affairs as well as humanitarian efforts. There's even more speculation that President Biden will also be asking for from 4 hours to 3 days because, again, there's so much going on in terms of the dynamics of hostage affairs as well as providing humanitarian assistance.
Right. According to reports, President Biden has been pushing like you said, for 3 days, for longer pauses. How much assistance can actually be provided to the people of Gaza in these neighborhoods with 4 hours, considering the amount of infrastructure damage there is and the distance that, the humanitarian aid is going to have to travel? Is there any idea of how the humanitarian aid will get to these different corridors?
Yes. So right about now, there's been some a lot of reporting in open sources that there was about a 96 trucks to or 106 trucks trying to reach, provide humanitarian assistance. But the operational environment or the security environment is extremely complex, where there are people located everywhere. You even have the issue with regards to the tunnels. So local civilians or innocent civilians are just deeply embedded in the area, so it's going to be harder to reach them. Now, the intent is to make sure that they are being departing to the Rafah crossing. But again, there's still a lot of people, a lot of Gazans that are located in the area, and it's just extremely hard to shift them from where they are to the Rafah crossing, a complete shift of all of them to the Rafah crossing. So that's why this is extremely complex terrain right about now, especially when you're dealing with tunnels. And then also there are civilians that are still around the Hamas and even just more embedded around them. So it's just really, really complex.
Yeah, I mean, especially when they don't have fuel, because has there been any talk about trying to allow civilians fuel anymore so that the hospitals can get back up and running, so that people, I've seen videos of people using horses and animals to try to get around. Is there any movement on that aspect?
Yeah, so the international community just recently had an aid conference in France. You're also seeing the vice president and other key officials representing the administration trying to negotiate providing more humanitarian assistance when it comes to food, water, and especially fuel. So that's a major concern. But the international community overall is trying to aggressively make sure that that kind of assistance is provided as soon as possible.
Right, right. There has been a lot of international pressure that's been coming down on Netanyahu. My question is, how do we know that they're not just going to drop more bombs outside of this 4-hour window, right? I mean, there is, I think the 4-hour window obviously will give people just a logistical breathing room and reprieve, but how much help is that if people are going to just get bombed in higher quantities outside of that 4-hour window? Do you have any perspective on that?
Well, according to multiple media sources, the United States is really trying hard to just make sure that they maintain synchronization with the Israelis. Unfortunately, there are some disagreements on how to move forward as far as an alignment goes. So in my opinion, moving forward, there are going to be some surprises that are going to be conducted in terms of military operations by the Israelis, because they are definitely determined to ensure that they're going to complete this counteroffensive. But for the most part, Benjamin Netanyahu is extremely determined to complete this mission. He will most likely, work very closely with the United States, but he's more forward thinking in terms of trying to complete his mission as far as eradicating Gaza.
Well, it seemed like he's definitely trying to eradicate Gaza as opposed to just Hamas. But Hamas is not in the West Bank. What is the White House doing around the increase that we're seeing in terms of deaths of Palestinians in the West Bank, despite the fact that Hamas is not actually there? So there can't be any kind of counteroffensive against them in that region.
Well, what you've seen a lot in terms of political leadership engagements, the administration has been working very closely with the Palestinian authorities. You just had Secretary Blinken meet with Abbas just recently as far as how to address that issue effectively with the Palestinians, as far as addressing those concerns, because one of the implications that has been discussed recently is that Hamas is not only in pursuit of, targeting Israel because of the conditions in Gaza, but also what he foresees in the West Bank. So as a way to counter that narrative or that effort, the United States feels that they need to work more closely with the Palestinian authorities, which rejects what Hamas has done, and do better outreach with the Palestinians in the West Bank as far as addressing these issues.
Right. I'm going to go to my panel. I'm going to start off with you, Lauren. Do you have a question for Asha?
You know, I really think that this conflict is so steeped in history that it just seems to never end. My question for you is, do you think that this conflict, can it ever find its way to peace? Do you think you will ever see that?
Yes. So, you know, when you look at foreign policy, sometimes there are certain crises that become game changers, right? This conflict is about 90 years old or more, but, you know, this may be to the point where, you know, not only Israel and the Palestinians, but the whole entire Middle East may want to see sustainable peace because they're sick and tired of ongoing conflicts in the region. You know, they're branded as a region of conflicts, and they want to move on from that to where they want to bring in, you know, technology, startups, economic opportunities. You know, the region is so trying to build on its economic empowerment. You know, there's so many things that they want to do to move away from, you know, ongoing conflict and violence because of, you know, in terms of their image, they're known to be just, you know, a violent region. So I think this could possibly be a game changer. However, on the contrary, you know, perpetual conflict is a possibility here. Beyond a counteroffensive in Gaza, that may not necessarily resolve anything, right? That can fuel more radicalism, where it can lead to another Hamas 3.0. So there's a sign of, you know, the possibility that it can escalate into something else. So it can go either way. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I want to go back to the earlier point about Israel saying they've destroyed 130 Hamas tunnel shafts. Have you seen any reporting on how many actual Hamas fighters or leaders they're saying they have taken out?
There's a lot of speculation on like different types of numbers of, you know, percentage of how many different Hamas leaders. But for the most part, you know, I saw about a couple, not that many.
Right.
So there's still more work that needs to be done. But again, because of the dense terrain, the tunnels, the overall security environment is pretty much complex. It's going to be harder to target these leaders. But what you can also see not too long ago, as of yesterday, United States pretty much had initiated airstrikes in Syria as a way to deter these leaders from continuing its offensive terrorist activities within the region. So that's also part of the effort as far as targeting leaders that are responsible for these heinous acts. So we'll see. But for the most part, I think moving forward, we're definitely going to be engaged in targeting the leadership, that especially those that are involved in this initiation of targeting Israelis.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because I've seen a handful, to your point, like, I mean, I don't know, it's probably in the tens from what I understand, right, which is a hugely disproportionate number through the thousands. People want to question the validity of the numbers, but at a minimum, thousands of Palestinians have been killed as a result of these strikes. And I remember when after so many neighborhoods have been leveled, there was reporting of like, well, Hamas has all these tunnels. And I said, okay, well, hold up now. They got tunnels. So then why the schools and the other buildings being leveled if they in tunnels? What's that supposed to do? I'm just curious, what does leveling apartment buildings and neighborhoods do if there are all these tunnels that Hamas is under? I'm just curious from just a military standpoint, does that actually serve any purpose?
It's really complex in terms of looking at this security environment, but for the most part, the tunnels within definitely make it harder to target specific leadership. And as far as level setting the environment, it's extremely hard, you know, and we learned that lesson as a result of Hamas actually being able to penetrate through the Iron Dome, because of the fact that was a clear sign that the intelligence gathering wasn't necessarily effective at getting the whole picture. It's harder to target or be able to effectively maneuver in this security environment because of the fact that it's hard to get a good picture of what's exactly inside of there, especially with the fact that the tunnels and other areas of concealment, it makes it harder for us to be able to operate effectively in there. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to go to Teresa. You have the next question.
Well, thank you so much for that information. I think the high-level overview of kind of what's going on is exactly what we need, because there are a lot of different reports. Do you feel like the U.S. is doing all it can, especially with the funds that are being sent over there, or do you feel like we can do more?
I think the United States is playing a responsible role right now where they can do what they can. Again, just seeking for a 4-hour delay or trying to seek for a 3-hour delay in order to provide humanitarian assistance and continuing hostage affairs is very important. It also helps meet halfway when it comes to the ceasefire, because right now when you look at the rest of the region, the Arab countries, the United Nations, they're calling for a ceasefire. Meanwhile, you see that Israel wants to continue its counteroffensive. So I think the United States, for the most part, is trying to balance out between the two, but leaning more towards ensuring that we don't create a humanitarian disaster, and that if we are going to be targeting Hamas, it has to be there has to be some sort of precision with it so that we can avoid, impacting local innocent civilians. So for the most part, I think it is a very hard situation because the terrain is extremely complex and the politicalization of it is extremely sensitive. So I think the position in terms of the United States, that's just how it looks right now, but extremely hard to navigate.
Yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't look like it's precise. It looks so imprecise to the point of almost being intentionally imprecise. I mean, we've had so many of the buildings leveled in Palestine. The Jabalia refugee camp was bombed one day, and then they said, well, we think we got a leader, and then they bombed it 2 additional days after that. And so this is a very critical moment for a number of reasons, right? But even just politically speaking, it doesn't seem like this issue necessarily did any harm to Democrats in the elections that we just saw on Tuesday. But how is this going to be explained, the level of carnage that we're seeing, the level of destruction that we're seeing in Gaza, to people that, understanding it is a complex issue, many of us are, have always kind of been like, I'm not touching that, I don't know enough about it, I'm not going to really comment on it, but it's very much in our face now what we're seeing happen in Gaza. It'd be one thing if we saw people in some camouflage out there shooting off rockets or something, but what we're seeing is children and women mostly being killed. So how does the White House grapple with that? Because just changing some of the language and kind of saying, what we believe and Gazans have a right to self-determination, I think that there's a disconnect between that language and what we're seeing happening on the ground. So what do you think? How does that messaging get through despite what we're seeing?
Yes, thank you for that question. So if you notice over time, since the start of the conflict up until now, the message has been shifting from, showing full support to Israel, now continuing to, we're shifting towards showing support for Israel as well as the Palestinians.
Yeah.
So I think for the most part, the administration is showing, adapting to what the public wants to hear as well as what they're seeing too as well. Yeah. I think too what we have to take into account as well, as far as the media cycle goes, there's always going to be this coverage of these depictions of young people or the Gazans being, impacted from this. So at the end of the day, we have to explain what is going on. And then what you're seeing is a strategy after strategy is being, promoted by the White House, for instance. We got to make sure that we address Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, We show care for the children. We show care for the innocent civilians in Gaza. So I think you're going to just see more and more of that messaging. And then also to what's interesting to note as far as from the start of this conflict up until now, many of us are not really informed about the conflict. We're on a big learning curve as a nation as far as what exactly does this look like. But I am deeply impressed how quick we have been able to learn more about it, to now where we're becoming more affirmed about making sure that the Palestinians are being protected, the Palestinians are treated fairly, and that we're also condemning what has happened to innocent Israelis. So you're seeing where, we start off not as informed, but there is this quick learning curve, and you're seeing this firm stance on support and fairness. Now, at the White House, what I do like is that President Biden and also Vice President Harris is constantly being engaging with, different groups, just Israelis as well as Palestinians, Muslim groups, to help shape those messaging points, to help to learn or understand what exactly is going on. So their eyes and ears are definitely open to learning about the implications. And the more they do that, I think the better the messaging will be coming out of the White House.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have seen a shift in the rhetoric and the messaging. The ground stuff got to catch up, though, to the messaging, because you can sound sympathetic, but when you're still seeing people suffering in the way that they have, I mean, we're talking about people who don't even have bread, water, electricity. They don't have communications for extended period of times. There's a disconnect between the rhetoric and the messaging and the help that's actually reaching the people of Palestine and Gaza. I'm going to let Dr. Carr have the last question and word on this one.
Thank you, Reese. Thank you, Ms. Castleberry Hernandez. With all due respect, this isn't complex at all. Israel has been in violation of international law for decades. All of the settlements are illegal by international law. The UN human rights chief yesterday called what's going on, this collective punishment of by Israel of Palestinian citizens, a war crime. It's very clear that the criminal prime minister of Israel, perhaps to avoid going to jail himself from some completely unrelated stuff, has determined to wipe out the Palestinians. It's not, the White House really can't shape the messaging at this point. They've lost the messaging war. And so my question, and I'm not talking about Arabs versus Jews. I'm not talking about Israelis versus Palestinians. I might mention, however, since the Oslo II Accords grants the Palestinian National Authority maritime jurisdiction over up to 20 nautical miles off of Gaza's coast, and close to $1 trillion of natural gas has been discovered off that coast within those waters. And on October 30th, the Israelis signed a deal with at least a half dozen more energy companies to tap that gas, not to mention the Ben Gurion Canal, which would replace the Suez Canal, having nothing to do with old religious hatreds, ancient hatreds, or settler colonialism. My question is, how much more time can the Israeli military continue to kill, to slaughter human beings who have nothing to do with Hamas, while the world opinion has turned against them? The United Nations has said this is a war crime, an act of genocide. And even yesterday in Tokyo, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a black man, Charles Brown, said, as the longer this goes on, the worse it is for this pariah. He didn't call it a pariah state. I'm calling Israel a pariah state, not the citizens, because they're quieting the citizens in Israel who are against this as well. Charles Brown said this needs to end, because the longer it goes on, the worse it's going to be for the Israeli government and the Israeli military. How much more time, in the limited time Israel has to conduct this slaughter, will they continue to conduct this slaughter, in your estimable opinion?
I think they're running out of time. As you could see, that international consensus continues to grow. They've mentioned the UN as well as in the region from neighboring countries. So in my opinion, it's, we're at a tipping point where, they are running out of time, and that this counteroffensive is going to be quite ugly moving forward. Another point, too, to mention is that there is a lot of speculation covered in the media with regards to the prospects of Benjamin Netanyahu as far as being the prime minister. And I think as that comes out more and more, that's going to shape how we're going to move forward in the region. And that's going to also further criticize how they're moving forward in the counteroffensive, or just continue to monitor it effectively. But for the most part, I think it's looking really good in terms of that that international consensus continuing to grow, and then you also could see within the American people if that's exactly what they want. And the more pressure that's being applied, the better, I think. But as far as time goes, I think it's just it's inevitable, and for the most part, I think they're running out of time.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Asha Castleberry Hernandez, you've been wonderful. You've been so informative. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. We'll be back with more Roland Martin Unfiltered. You are watching the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, inflation is on the rise. Interest rates are high. Can you still thrive during these uncertain times? On the next Get Wealthy, you're gonna meet a woman who's done just that, living proof of what you need to do to flourish during these uncertain times.
These are times where you take advantage of what's going on. This is how people get rich or richer.
That's right here on Get Wealthy, only on Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr, we welcome the Black Star Network's very own Roland Martin, who joins us to talk about his new book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. The book explains so much about what we're going through in this country right now, and how, as white people head toward becoming a racial minority, it's going to get, well, let's just say, even more interesting.
We are going to see more violence. We're going to see more vitriol, because as each day passes, it is a nail in that coffin.
The one and only Roland Martin on the next Black Table, right here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Me, Sherry Shepard, and you know what you're watching, Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Today, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments for the United States versus Rahimi case, which could have profound implications for Americans' safety against gun violence. Rahimi focuses on whether the government has the authority to disarm those who have been issued a restraining order for domestic abuse. Joining me now are Stasha Rhodes, the campaign director of United for Democracy, and Alma G. Davis, founder and CEO of the Alma Domestic Violence Foundation in Atlanta, to discuss the implications of this case. Stasha, I'm going to go to you first. Give us a little bit more background on this case and the implications.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, first I want to say thank you for having me, but most importantly, thank you for covering this case. There's a lot happening in our world, as you all know, and it's so easy to bypass a seemingly sleepy SCOTUS oral arguments, but it's really important that we don't wait to talk about these cases after the decisions are issued in June, but that we shine a light now and spread the word now about the cases that are on the docket. So thank you for covering this today. So look, this case involves a current federal law that makes it a crime to possess a gun if a court has determined that someone is a threat to their intimate partner, their child, or their partner's child. This particular case involves Mr. Rahimi, who is convicted of violating this federal law after he violently assaulted his ex-girlfriend in a parking lot and then shot a gun when he noticed that others had witnessed his abuse. He then allegedly called the ex-girlfriend and threatened to shoot her if she told anyone that he'd assaulted her. So Mr. Rahimi is challenging this federal law, saying that it's unconstitutional to prevent him from owning a firearm because it's against his Second Amendment right. If the court decides to rule in favor of Mr. Rahimi, it would be a massive victory for the NRA and would put firearms back in the hands of people who are subject to domestic violence restraining orders. Preventing domestic abusers from accessing firearms is common sense, life-saving, and constitutional. We've seen that this law works.
Now, did I hear you correctly? He was convicted of a crime too, right?
That's exactly right.
Of a violent crime.
Assault against his girlfriend, a violent crime. And look, we've seen that existing federal laws have been extremely effective in protecting families when a court has already determined that there is a threat of danger, which is what, in this case, Mr. Rahimi had been determined by the court.
Okay, so they already had a restraining order on him, and then he committed this crime with a gun despite having a restraining order. So with the restraining order, was the gun taken away from him at that time?
It wasn't taken away. Well, I guess it's unclear how he got access to the gun.
Okay.
The true fact of the case is that he violated the federal law that says after you have been convicted of assaulting an intimate partner and been given a restraining order, then you're not allowed to possess a gun. And Mr. Rahimi violated that federal law.
Well, if anything should be a no-brainer, it should be this, but we do have a very conservative court. Any indications as to is there an appetite from the justices on this court to overturn this? What is your take on this?
Listen, this would not be unusual for this court to do the most conservative thing possible. We've seen this particular 6-3 conservative or extreme conservative majority take some pretty extreme stances. This case comes before the court 2 years after this same Supreme Court issued a landmark 6-3 decision in a New York case striking down a public carry law. And part of what makes this a little bit difficult is that in that case, Justice Clarence Thomas said that our current laws, the government should demonstrate that the regulation is consistent with the nation's historical tradition, which is a ridiculous new legal precedent that would require gun safety laws to be similar to laws in 1791 through 1868. And so it is unclear what this court will do, but it will not be surprising if they have the most extreme conservative ruling against the American people.
I'm going to bring you in a second, but I know, Stasha, that we ran a little over, so you have to go in a second. So I have one more question for you. If this were to be overturned at the federal level, does that have any implications at the state levels where there might already be laws to this effect, or is it just go to the states for them to decide?
Absolutely. This would have tremendous implications for state laws across our country, as did the Bruin decision. I think that, usually when the Supreme Court rules on cases, it means more than just that one case. It has tremendous implications for state laws across our country. And look, as our country reels from yet another mass shooting in Maine, we know that action is long overdue. Gun violence prevention groups across the country have been working to make states and our nation safer, but they face an ultimate roadblock of a Supreme Court that is hostile to common sense. And we think that we need a Supreme Court that understands the importance of advancing public safety as achieving an important government interest. We're not confident that this Supreme Court is going to take the necessary steps to protect us all from gun violence. That's why it's important for us to be talking about this case now.
Right. Stasha, thank you so much for your expertise and sounding the alarm on this case.
Thank you for having me.
Alma, Sasha just mentioned the recent mass shooting that happened in Maine. We know from these statistics that many of these mass shootings actually involve people who have had domestic situations. You are the CEO of the Alma Domestic Violence Foundation. Talk about how domestic violence is not just a woman's issue, it is a public safety issue, if you can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on this evening to discuss such an important topic. When we talk about domestic violence, most people automatically assume this is something that's being attributed only to women, and that is far from the truth. When we look at statistics, you look at 1 out of 4 women, 1 out of 7 males. But when you understand that only 5% of cases are reported, as well as it is a #1 issue in the LGBTQ community, it is a #1 issue on college campuses. You have millions of children a year, over 10 million children a year, witnessing domestic violence. This is not a one-size-fits-all, and only women experience that. As we see gun violence ramping up, it is making it a lot harder for those suffering from domestic violence to, #1, want to go to the police or want to get help, because leaving is the most dangerous time for someone that is experiencing domestic violence. And when you have been threatened by your abuser, especially someone that has a firearm in the house, and they are not only threatening you, they might be threatening your children or your animals, it's hard for you to leave. And then not having the confidence to know that if you move ahead, you get a TPO, which is a temporary protective order, or this person has been convicted of domestic violence and they are able to go get a firearm after their conviction, it makes it a lot harder for that person to leave, and it makes it a lot harder for that person to feel safe.
Absolutely. I mean, it's already, there's a perception, and in many cases it's true, that to even get a protective order, the standard is so high and you have to prove so much abuse is already happening. So this would obviously undermine the safety and even the potential of protection from women and, to your point, men who experience domestic violence from around the country. I'm going to bring the panel in since they've been on hold. I'm going to give the first question to Teresa.
Thank you so much for that information. Is there a way that we could really, take a look at, I think on the federal side, I'm okay with some of the gun laws. But I think, as we even look at this case, is there a way we could, add in, a psych evaluation, especially for this case, to ensure that, those who are convicted, are inside of the system to see if they mentally have the capacity to even own a gun?
Being a domestic violence advocate, we are open to all of those things. We would love to see those things happen. Now, how easily would that be passed? That's a whole different situation. With the standard gun laws, we would hope that that those things are being checked, and we know that some are, some are not. But that would be an excellent resource to be able to add. But if we're having a hard time right now, we're in court trying to get TPOs passed to where people, once they've been convicted, cannot possess a firearm. I'm not sure on the boundaries or the things that would prohibit or make it mandatory for someone who has been convicted to have a psych evaluation.
Dr. Carr?
Thank you, Reese, and thank you, Ms. Davis. Listening to the oral arguments in the case on Tuesday, it was interesting because John Roberts, Chief Justice, asked the attorney for Raheny, "You don't have any doubt that your client is a dangerous person, do you?" And of course, he couldn't defend the guy. I guess I don't expect that this case they're not going to rule for Raheny. I think that they're going to probably overturn that crazy Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is, of course, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. So I don't think that's going to be the issue. The question will be, it seems to me, and I think it was addressed a little bit earlier by Sister Rhodes, and that is how far they go with regard to that New York State rifle versus Bruin case from last year, where they basically saying if you've got a gun, it takes almost the devil himself to take it out of your hand, because we're going to overturn all the gun laws. My question to you, really, as like you said, domestic violence advocate, and clearly in a case where this is a clearly open and shut case of a dangerous person who is, just out of control, what is your best hope for if they overturn? Because it seemed like Alito and Thomas were the only ones with any appetite at all to upholding this crazy appeals court decision. What is your best hope that maybe the Supreme Court, because Ketanji Brown Jackson was making this point over and over again, usually in the minority, but in this case, maybe she can make some sense of this, that they might actually use this decision as an attempt to kind of restrict and rein in some of the Bruin decision, where they basically said gun rights trump damn near everything else, including domestic abuse. But this seems like such an egregious case that they're not going to uphold it. But what is your best hope that this decision might come out as?
My best hope would be that they would continue, that they would throw out the dismissal and obviously continue on. I know in Georgia, once you've been convicted of anything dealing with domestic violence or any type of family violence, you are not able to get a firearm. So the best hope is that will be continued. If for some odd reason it does get overturned, that makes our job as advocates a little bit harder, but it gives us an opportunity to continue educating people on what domestic violence is. How do we keep people safe? How do we give people the tools they need well before they get into that type of situation, just to avoid being in that situation because of things like this? One of the things that we are dealing with, I know in the DV world, is already there's been a large cut due to funding, VOCA and VOWA funding has been cut. And so that's a fight that we're in right now, because the number of domestic violence incidents is clearly on the rise. When you look at family violence and just violence in all in terms, and you look at the amount of things that is going on, from when you look at people continue to lose jobs, you got AI coming in, taking jobs. Domestic violence is not decreasing. It will continue to increase, and therefore, as I stated, our job is to continue to go out, to advocate, to find resources, and to hopefully keep as many people out of this situation as possible.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Lauren, you get the last question.
What is the percentage of domestic violence cases that involve use of a firearm?
In Georgia, I know I think it's right at 83 or 87% was the last rate of people that were deceased due to domestic violence and due to loss of life in domestic violence. But those are the rates for Georgia. I'm not quite sure for the rates for the entire United States, but I know those are the rates for Georgia.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Carr, I want to return to you for 1 second. So do you predict that maybe if this isn't upheld for Rahimi, that this can actually re-usher in some of the gun control that was undone by their last decision? I was trying to make sure I understood that correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think this is their conundrum, Reese. I mean, this guy is so clearly out of control. And the Fifth Circuit, they've been, in fact, it seems like a great deal of this court, which we know is extremely right-wing, but a great deal of their work is reversing this crazy Fifth Circuit. In fact, these MAGA folk have succeeded too well in the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit, they declared a whole entire federal agency unconstitutional.
Right.
They talked about seizing control of us, that states have the ability to seize control of content on Twitter. And so John Robertson and them are like, except Thomas and Alito. So listening to the oral arguments the other day in Raheny, it's clear that they're not going to uphold this. I would be very surprised if they uphold it. But the question, to the point that you're raising, the question is how they're going to get around it. because Ketanji Brown Jackson was slamming them on the Brewer case. Because we know in that case, of course, they're saying you don't have, if it wasn't on the books in 1791, damn it, you can't do anything about it. But now you're going to let this guy out the cage now. Is this what you're going to do? So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. They're probably going to try to make as narrow a ruling as possible. They might even say Brewer doesn't apply to Raheny, but they're going to have to do some legal gymnastics that is going to stink to high heaven if they just try to restrict this case to this case only. Of course, we've seen it before. It's called Bush versus Gore.
Right. Well, we know they'll do any kind of legal gymnastics, but let's hope for the best in this situation. Alma, how can folks follow you and support the work that you do?
Yes, you can follow us via Instagram, any type of social media under Alma_DVF or Alma Domestic Violence Foundation. We not only serve clients in Georgia, we serve clients all over the country. Last year, we even worked with clients in South Korea. So we're located inside of Atlanta, but we have services all over the country. So yes, they can follow us on any of our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or call us directly to our office where we service clients.
Thank you again, Alma, for the work that you do. And thank you again, Stasha Rhodes, for her expertise a little bit earlier. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol. We've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys. This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
John Murray, the executive producer of the new Sherry Shepherd Talk Show.
This is your boy, Earthquake.
And you're tuned in to
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
During Wednesday night's third Republican debate, South Carolina Senator and the only black candidate, Tim Scott, bragged about how the party is winning back black and Hispanic voters.
See the combination of the three. Ambassador, thank
Truth of my life destroys the lies of the radical left. We need a president and a candidate who will actually help our base solidify and attract independent voters into our party. The Great Opportunity Party is now winning back African-American voters and Hispanic voters because we are working on a foundation based on faith. Our nation is facing some deep challenges. It is the loss of faith in this nation that is a part of the erosion that we're seeing every single day. It's restoring faith, restoring our Christian values that will help this nation once again become the city on the hill. When Ronald Reagan talked about the city on the hill, he was coming from Matthew 5. When President Lincoln talked about a house divided, that was Mark. Our founding documents speak to the importance of a faith foundation. You don't have to be a Christian for America to work for you, but America does not work without a faith-filled Judeo-Christian foundation. I would be the president that helps us restore faith in God, faith in each other, and faith in our future. Without that focus, none of the issues, the policies matter. We have to get back to being a nation that is, in fact, the city on the hill, that believes in each other enough for us to fight for that future.
Senator Scott.
I want to bring in my panel to get their thoughts on what Tim Scott said. Dr. Carr, I saw you alternating between laughing and shaking your head. What you got to say about 2% polling Tim and how he's winning over the black vote?
Why you do that to me, sis? I mean, you know, if Tim Scott weren't so damn cowardly, if he wasn't such a punk on things like the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, lying to the family of George Floyd and to all of us, if he wasn't such a punk, I may have more sympathy for him because, I mean, you know, he's struggling to overcome his challenges of articulation, challenges of nervousness, challenges of finding some, I'm glad the actor's strike is over so that he could produce a girlfriend last night. Mama and everybody else came to stage and then, you know, grab her lightly around the waist. Got to be careful. But, you know, Tim Scott has to be careful because, you know, they're not going to love you, son. You can quote the Bible. You can battering ram theocracy. This is not a theocracy. At least we hope it won't become one. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you saw your young protege, young Dan Cameron, lose in Kentucky, and every other Republican won by at least 700,000 votes, some almost 800,000, while young Dan got about 620,000 votes, meaning what? Even the white nationalists will not vote for a black person. Your audition for vice president has failed. That was a painful thing to watch last night, although I must admit the food fight between Ramaswamy and Nehandra Haley was kind of interesting. Tim Scott is an embarrassment, and he's reached his ceiling, and he should probably be quiet now and take his actress, white woman, girlfriend back to where she came from and I should stop. I should really stop because y'all get me in trouble. I have no problem with interracial marriages, and I don't, and even interracial relationships. I don't know that Tim Scott is in one, but he should stop. He should just stop. Stop, Tim. Stop, brother. Just stop.
Well, you know, Daniel Cameron has a white wife, so maybe casting a white wife wasn't the right time. He should have waited for the poll results, election results to come out before he made his final selection, before he gave that final rose out. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, Tim Scott, I don't know about that central casting choice. I think it's interesting that he spent the last many months allowing people to think he was gay as opposed to just coming out with his white woman. If he's been with her for a year, he should have came out with her right away. That way, you could have put all the other stuff to rest. But, you know, Lauren, what do you think about Tim's performance and the unveiling of his Christian girlfriend last night? Is that a bigger deal than anything that he had to say or what?
Come on, y'all. Why can't y'all let Timmy be Timmy? Why do y'all mess with him? I don't know what to make of the girlfriend thing. I don't know why there couldn't have been a straight answer. There's any one of a number of answers that you could have had. Which could have just been, I'm just not in a relationship right now. Like, right. Who cares? Like, but he made a bigger deal about it by being uneasy about it. And then it just is like, wait a minute. And of course, the donors are uneasy because they want to see a straight male up there. Let's just be real. Right. So they were trying to investigate to figure out, okay, is he gay? What is going on here? But maybe nothing is going on. But Tim Scott is just an uneasy character. And the reason he's an uneasy character, of course, is because he is this black avatar for white conservatives that they need to prop up when they need to say something, and the message has to go through him. You know, of course, that is not something unique to the Republican Party, but in a party where there's not that many black folks, you know, these sort of Cameron, Tim Scott figures become very valuable with regard to messaging. But it is particularly ridiculous in the age that we live in with Donald Trump around and race riots in Charlottesville and all sorts of other racial tension brought on by Donald Trump, that you have a black U.S. senator running for president and never mentioning any of this stuff. Yeah. And, you know, Christian values, is he kidding? What about Christian values allows you to vote against people's health care? What about Christian values allows you to vote against poor people and poverty programs and the child tax credits and all these things that you would think, Christian values would indicate. So it was interesting that he brought that up because really, dude, are you kidding me? Where is that reflected in your policy? So the problem with Tim Scott is that he likes to talk in platitudes. He likes to talk in talking points and generalities. And once you get into specificity, which you ultimately have to get into when you're running for president, he's flat cold busted. It's as simple as that. He got flat cold busted in the diner with some dude that just said to him, look, I've never seen you stand up to Donald Trump. I mean, that was a real simple question. He got ticked off because he's not used to pushback. And people who are not used to pushback, who don't take questions in the hallway at the U.S. Capitol, can't handle running for president of the United States. So that's the problem generally with Tim Scott.
Oh, yeah, that nice little down-home Christian man went right out the window. He had a little tipper on him. But, I do think it's interesting to Dr. Carr's point earlier, how they're not going to love you. I remember when all this discussion around his girlfriend or his spouse or whatever came up, he said it was like 1963 all over again. They can't call him black, so they talk about his relationship. So now I guess you can put that to bed. Teresa, do you think, though, that Tim Scott is what's going to bring the blacks over to the Republican Party as he's claiming there's a surge of support?
I do not. I think we had a better chance with Kanye West. But, look, every time I look at Senator Scott's, earlier videos when it's like from cotton fields to Congress and he's on the farm in the background, he's like, this is where I was from. I'm just like looking at your age, like, no, you were not. But,
right.
It was, I think he's living, in this delusion because you are the only African American in this race that African Americans are just ultimately going to support you. And I think, again, that's just a delusion and weird political consulting that is taking place when you haven't made those type of investments that really hit the home and the hearts of people that look like you. And every time we see you, you're standing behind something negative or something extreme that goes against the values. And then you want to stand today and then try to use your pastoral voice in order to figure out, maybe this, if it worked for Senator Warnock, maybe it'll work for me.
Or Justin Pearson, or is it Justin Jones? Which one of them has a little pastor voice?
Justin Pearson.
Okay, Pearson. I'm sorry, Tracy, were you done? I
think we got the message. Yeah, I think we got it.
Okay.
Senator Scott is just trying on a whole bunch of levels to just figure out the best way because he doesn't know where his base is. DeSantis' base is, conservative white women who, want to ban books and history, and then we have Senator Haley, who is now all of a sudden for abortion rights, when her entire So there's a whole bunch going on that I think we just need to, again, with these folks who have been in public office and in the public sphere for quite some time, is that we take a look at their records. And so it's almost like we got to do a record check for those, want to run for, this seat that, really determines, where dollars are spent, our livelihood, our protections, our freedoms, and really see who's really putting on the performance or who's really going to do the job for the American people.
Yeah. Well, you brought up abortion rights. Speaking of which, New Jersey ex-governor Chris Christie had this to say about his party's stance on being pro-life.
Here's the bigger issue, Kirsten. The bigger issue is, and Tim began to touch on this, we're not pro-life for the whole life. To be pro-life for the whole life means that the life of a 16-year-old drug addict on the floor of the county lockup is precious, and we should get treatment for her to restore her life. The 52-year-old who's drug addicted should make sure that any of his children who he's passed that addiction on to are treated well, too. Pro-life's not just in the womb, Kirsten. It's for the whole life.
Damn it, I agree with Chris Christie on that. Now, I don't think his record reflects the rhetoric that he's spewing up there, but I mean, I do think, Lauren, and I want to go to you on this, If any of these Republicans were even remotely reasonable, there might be a little bit of an appetite for people to support them. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they never seem to choose the option and the strategy of broadening the tent of ideas in the Republican Party to get more support. That never seems to be on the table. You know, we saw a situation with picking the speaker where every option is on the table except agreeing with the Democrats on a consensus candidate, because we can't be caught dead broadening the tent or moderating in any way. It's always got to be the solution to everything has got to be some sort of zero-sum type of thing. And on an issue so personal like abortion, which I can never figure out why the Republican Party that talks so much, at least the traditional Republican Party, talks about getting government out of people's lives, suddenly wants to be in your life when it comes to the most important decisions that an individual has to make. Typically, two individuals have to make. And why it's anybody else's business other than those two individuals, I haven't figured out yet. As long as those two individuals are above the age of 18, I'm not sure why that's the case, but the Republican Party, for some reason, wants to get wrapped around the axle on this issue. And now this Dobbs decision is making them pay big time at the polls, which is what we just saw in Virginia. We'd already seen it in several other states, but Virginia really confirmed it because these candidates in Virginia were running abortion ads like you never want to believe in terms of pro-choice. And they all pretty much, most of them won on that message. So this is a huge problem for the Republican Party as long as they want to have absolutist views, which apparently they want to have, and they're going to keep losing. And losing is typically what makes a strategy in politics change, but we'll see.
Well, the Republicans also believe they could just cheat their way to win it too, you know. But obviously abortion is a hugely losing issue for them on a broader scale. Sure, it's fine in Mississippi and Louisiana or in these deep red states, Idaho, but when you're talking about purplish states or even like red, but like just on the other side of purple red, it's not a winning issue. I did see some change in rhetoric. There wasn't as much talk about a national abortion ban as more of states' rights, which is a shift. And Teresa, I'm going to go to you on this because you brought this up as well. Nikki Haley, she tried to moderate her rhetoric around abortion, saying, well, you know, there are people that are, you shouldn't judge people based on their abortion stance. There are people that are, you know, pro-choice, and I don't agree with them, but, you know, that's they voted. Do you think anybody's going to buy that any of these Republicans, like Nikki Haley, are suddenly more moderate, which is still extreme to me to even be pro-abortion the way they are? I'm sorry, anti-abortion. But do you think anybody's going to buy this slight pivot that they're trying to do?
Not at all, unless it is a voter who hasn't paid attention to the record. And that's why I said really need to go and set the record straight. I think, you know, Nikki Haley's team has been doing their due diligence and reading what's been happening since the election. Pennsylvania is a purple state. And now, you know, because Republicans have been running on the message of abortion rights and, you know, like literally, like it was just insane. But now, you know, Pennsylvania Democratic Party in its first time in history had Superior, Supreme, Commonwealth, all Democrats, and a clean slate across the finish line. And guess what? They were actually talking about pro-choice. But, you know, media isn't covering that. They're saying, you know, that the issue is that Republicans, you know, are just one way. And what I think Nikki is actually trying to show is that, hey, I can change my mind, especially if I'm going in a higher office. I can change my mind, especially that I'm starting to listen to the surface of what it's saying. So I think all of them really, you know, if they really believe what they're hearing on the ground, then policies do change. And honestly, when we ask for, you know, our elected officials to do is to look at the facts, listen to the people, and create the narrative that'll get you across the finish line, but also make sure that you're actually going to implement it once you're there. Now, do we believe, back to your original question, Nikki Haley is actually going to, you know, do we believe her that she is pro-choice? Likely no, but I think it's a great talking point that if others want to get in line, they can also do the same thing.
Right. I mean, if she's auditioning for VP, or maybe if she delusionally thinks that she can take on Donald Trump, or maybe he'll be in jail and drop out, I don't know, then obviously sounding less extreme on abortion is a politically intelligent thing to do. But we all know that she's going to appoint the same anti-choice judges that any of these other candidates will. So rhetoric be damned, we know what you're actually going to do. Before I go to you, Dr. Carr, I did want to address Vivek Ramaswamy. I enjoy Nikki Haley knocking his head around, but what I did not appreciate was the way that he came after Kristen Welker last night. That felt, I mean, I know that Donald Trump talked about, Megyn Kelly, and he was disrespectful to her. I don't remember if he said the blood coming out of her eyes or whatever. I felt like that was in an interview after the fact. I don't even think he had that energy on stage. But for him to open up, coming out swinging on the black woman, you have 2 black moderators, and he attacks the black woman, demanding that she answer a question that was more of an accusation and just foaming at the mouth, being an asshole. That is disgusting. I feel like he only did that because she is a black woman, and he already knows that there isn't going to be a galvanization against him the same way that Donald Trump, yes, he ended up winning, but people were dragging Donald Trump for a little bit over his disrespect of Megyn Kelly. And did it even trend how disrespectful he was? It's being treated as though, yeah, he's taking it to the dance. And that's just disgusting, anti-black, disrespectful behavior. You are a punk-ass bitch, Vivek, for punching down on Kristen Welker, knowing that she's going to be a professional and not check the hell out of you like she would have. And let's the hoe, I ain't surprised that you ain't say nothing, but God damn it, if a black woman is being attacked right next to you just doing her job, you should have spoke up too. Dr. Carr, what do you think about that whole exchange and the lack of outrage, unless I missed it, that we're seeing around him blatantly disrespecting a moderator?
No, of course, you're absolutely right, Reese. You're absolutely right. I mean, there's even less discussion of this, meaning no discussion of this, than there was about the fact that young Dan Cameron lost in Kentucky because we refused to let Breonna Taylor down. No discussion. You see Joe Scarborough with his, soft white nationalists behind and his partner sitting up in there, and they want to make what happened in Kentucky about abortion. There's no discussion of black women. There's no discussion of black men, but in this particular case, there's no discussion of black women. Now, Kristen Welker, it's interesting. I lived in Philly for almost 20 years. I consider myself an adopted Philadelphian. And Kristen Welker, of course, came to the national media stage after years of being on local television in Philly. She's a known quantity in Philadelphia. She's very professional. She continued to carry it the way that black women have to carry it so many times in public. And Vivek Ramaswamy is, as Nikki Haley said last night, scum. It's hard to look him in the face because you're too bad looking at his brutal fronts and whatever white paste and that he has in his mouth. But he's desperate too. Yeah. He's talking crazy, but to borrow from the book of Reese, and I'll do this with a little bit of glee, somebody should slap the shit out of him on stage. Because I'm just saying, dude, but here's the problem. Here's the problem with that. We are now in a politics, and again, this is why I always appreciate not only this forum and this venue and this platform and the conversations we have, because it's so vital, but when we hear the political analysis of people like Lauren Victoria Burke and what happened in Virginia, just because Northam is, I'm not North Lord, I'm thinking about like they are the same. Just because the current governor is walking around with his little vest and being a little soft, they're all thinking that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
They're all thinking that, and it bristles to have black women in positions of power, like what's about to happen in the Virginia legislature. It just bristles. And Ramaswamy finally is saying the quiet part out loud. You can do that, but he wasn't punching. In my estimation, he wasn't punching down at Kristen Welker. He was punching up because he's a runt, a punk, a little ant-ass punk, and he was punching up at her, and she didn't even respond, which is what you have to do with punks like that.
If I feel like she could have been like, boy, bye. And like, Our black people, I know we get held to a higher standard of professionalism, and people applauded her. Oh, she didn't let him have a moment. I'm sorry, you ain't getting. We're gonna have a moment together, okay? Because if you sit up there and try to punk me and hold me in front of all these people, think you're gonna yell at me and scold me, and he's sitting up there lying the whole time. You're gonna have to give me a pass a little bit. You're gonna have to make some viral clips a little bit. But I understand she can't do that. Everybody is not a Reese Cobra Chat. Everybody can't get up here and cuss people out on TV. But Laura, I'm gonna give you the last word on this. Would you have what could she have? Could she have done anything? Because I feel like she could have done a little stuff. I'm not blaming her. But I feel like, do we have leeway in 2023 for somebody coming at you crazy to clap back just a little bit?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm from the Bronx, so I typically go the Reese route on stuff like this. I think that, but my mother's from Virginia, so it's genteel and it's nice and it's polite. So I get that style as well. I think that Ramaswamy is such a clown. There comes a time when you just have to, particularly in the world that we live in with the technology that we have, of constant people reactive, constant people saying stuff on social media, Facebook, whatever it is. And of course, if you do any sort of commentary, you're always putting yourself out there, whether it's YouTube or this show or anything else. You have to make a judgment. Do I want to waste time in my life on this person? Do I want to waste energy on this person? Or do I want to say what Kirsten Welker did, which is, I don't really give a damn. She smiled, and then the moment went on. That's not what I would have done because he's a punk-ass bitch. That's
Period.
Come on now.
He's a dumbass. He thinks he's smarter than everybody else. He thinks he's cute. He needs to get socked in the mouth. He's that type of bully that needs to get socked in the mouth. There's no other way to really deal with that. That's what I would have done, but I can understand her strategy of doing what she did. But he is clearly he shouldn't be on stage. He's a joke. Yeah. He's selling a book. He's not running a presidential campaign. Everybody knows that. He's trying to elevate his profile. This is all a game. The other thing he did, too, if you notice, is he attacked the media. You can never lose attacking the media. Yeah. There's certain groups in this country that you can never lose when you attack. The media is one of them. So he's playing that game. He's playing to the crowd. He thinks he's cute. But I get it, Kirsten. She didn't want to deal with the nonsense. Not my style, but I get it. I respect what she did,
Well, I'm never going down a black woman for being a professional, because it's very hard to come back. After you've had a recent moment, it's hard to come back from that. But so I respect what she did in that moment. But Lester, you could have said something like, hold up, don't address the moderator. So, I'm saying just a little something, but that's not the energy that was up there, so that's okay. But, at the end of the day, Vivek, to your point, Lauren, he's auditioning for Trump, vice president, but Trump is not going to pick somebody that wants to be vice president this bad. So I don't think that any of these people on this stage are the vice presidential pick for Donald Trump. He's going to pick somebody, maybe Don Jr. or somebody like that, that'll be loyal to him when he is in jail. Okay, that's my prediction. I'm sticking to it. We will be right back with more Roland Martin Unfiltered here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Dee Barnes, and next on The Frequency, we have griot, performance artist and author, writer, singer, and composer, Queen Mother Nana Camille Yarborough. Please join us for an incredible conversation of knowledge, wisdom, and power of the elders.
I'm a perception changer. You're a rearranger. You're a mind evolver and a problem solver. You're a beast eater, a soul excreter, a void filler, and a bile spiller. You are a thought warmer, a plan former, a power orchestrator, and a tongue translator.
Right here on The Frequency on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us.
We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
Hello, I'm Marissa Mitchell, a news anchor at Fox 5 DC.
Hey, what's up? It's Tammy Roman, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Jasmine McReynolds has been missing from Mobile, Alabama since May 11, 2023. The 15-year-old is 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighs 215 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Anyone with information about Jasmine McReynolds should call the Mobile, Alabama Police Department at 251-208-7211. The Black Alabama riverboat co-captain who was attacked on August 5th is facing assault charges. Damian Pickett is charged with third-degree assault, becoming the sixth person charged in the brawl, which happened because a private pontoon boat was preventing the Harriet II riverboat from docking along the Montgomery riverfront, but was blocked by a Pickett who took a smaller boat to the dock to move the pontoon boat on his own. But 4 white boaters attacked him, prompting others to defend Pickett, causing a massive melee. Zachary Shipman said in a new complaint that he was not trying to fight Pickett, but was defending himself and suffered a bruised cheekbone after Pickett allegedly punched him in the face. Shipman is charged with assaulting Pickett and is scheduled for the trial later this month. 2 people have already pled guilty to their roles in the August incident. Now, hold up. Who are you gonna believe, me or your lying eyes? Because I know I saw them white men hit Damian first. So, not guilty. I'm gonna stick beside him. But it's enough black people out there where I don't know if it's a majority like it is in Louisiana or unanimous, but not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Teresa, what do you think about these charges being brought so late in this brawl that obviously Damian was a victim of?
One, I'm again disgusted after seeing that video. Again, it's bringing back the same trauma that I had when I first watched it, of angst, heartfelt sadness, and just disgust, and wishing I was there in that moment to help him. Damian is a victim. Damian deserves justice, and Damian was fighting for his life. We don't know if a blow could have, knocked Damian out on the ground, and then next thing you know, we're having this conversation about a murder and, what charges we should bring there. Right. Thank God he's still alive. And I think, when we, take a look at the justice system and the degree of how long this took, yes, some people thought about it as a joke, and we start getting the chair. But the real sensible part is that there is a video, right? There is evidence that, he is the victim. And again, I can't thank technology enough, because technology showed that he was explaining what he needed to do on this job, while this white man came and literally just didn't want to talk and wanted to fight. I've never seen anything like this, but this is, again, another example of white privilege happening at an all-time high. And I firmly believe on this. If this video was not being recorded the way it is, I'm sure they would have said it was a one-on-one fight. Yeah. Well, you cannot lie when we have receipts, and it's a black enough area, like I said. Y'all got one job on that jury trial. Now, they might not let enough black people on there, but if you're the only black person, you got one job
not guilty. Lauren, though, I mean, Teresa, I can't say I felt angst or anxiety. I was like, get his ass. That's what I was like, because, you know, we came through. You had the black Michael Phelps out there, Aquaman, who swam across, came to the rescue. The big bros came down. It was a whole situation. You know, even Roland has his Team Whip That Ass chair T-shirts. It was a whole thing. I feel like we had such a victory from that, though, that this moment was inevitable. Where they was going to try to find one extra black person to throw under the bus and file charges on, and, you know, he's easily identifiable. Is this retaliation, Lauren, for how excited black people were to see the Montgomery uprising?
Yeah, I mean, it's so rare to see. In fact, I don't know that we've actually seen a video in history where black people are recorded on video whooping ass in that fashion in the South, or maybe not any place else, you know, against a bunch of white folks in a brawl, an all-out brawl on video.
Yeah.
Certainly we've heard, you know, historically we've, of course, you know, heard of many stories of things that have happened, but on video, this may be a first in that sense. And so, of course, as a history major, we see the history of Alabama rearing its head with regard to the way the criminal justice system works, which of course is disproportionately unjust toward black people. So of course it has to be, you know, it has to be the case that we throw back to the order of what the history is, which is that a black person cannot be allowed to get into that type of altercation without paying a social price. And they control, white folks in the South control the criminal justice system, which in Alabama means that there's going to be disproportionately negative mete-out justice against black folks. I find it interesting, you know, typically in these types of cases where you have two people fighting, it's a wash.
Yeah.
Even if you have a situation where you can tell in the video that, of course, the white individual starts the fight, starts the contact, but once the second person starts hitting back, you know, you have two people engaging in a fight, it's typically a wash. So it's fairly astonishing that he's being prosecuted. And with all the things that we saw in the video, that was, to me, the one, that set of exchanges, other than the folks that have him down on the ground, I would never have guessed that anyone would have been prosecuted. You know, I would never guess that he would be prosecuted. Because now he is fighting against 5 people. So, you know, not only would I have never guessed that he'd be prosecuted against the first individual, but now you've got 4 or 5 people on one guy and he's getting prosecuted. That's where you know you're in America. That's where you know you're in the South. And I'm telling you, it's going to be interesting to see what the trial and the penalty is, because that's where we really get into racial injustice. And, you know, a long history in this country, a 350-year-plus history in this country of seeing justice meted out against black folks, particularly black males. And so this is going to be, I think, what we would expect it to be given the history. And Dr. Carr, of course, will give us probably a better and more detailed answer than I will. But that is amazing that he is being prosecuted.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, it's like the audacity, but on the other hand, it's like the caucasity. Because what they say is don't even throw up the hat, don't even throw up the bad signal, just take your lick. We could just come over here and we could just pound on you and turn you every which way but loose, and you can't do a damn thing about it. But not in 2023, not in Montgomery. Like I said, you got one job, black people, on that doggone jury. Dr. Carr, take us home.
No question. No, I think we're all in one accord on this. I mean, Montgomery, I was just in Montgomery about a month ago, went down for Tuskegee's homecoming. It's a beautiful thing. One of my elders was being honored. He's the last that we know of living member of the founding chapter of Alpha at Tuskegee. He got his 75-year member pin, and we were in Montgomery for the ceremony. Shout out to Mariva Kelsey. And but, you know, I said, we got to go down here to the dock where the chair, I ain't getting this close and not at least looking at the water where the chair went down, right? Because we were staying right across from the thing.
Right.
But, and my mom's from down that way. And, and anybody who has lived black in America, as all the 4 of us have, know that we live under this constant pressure and this constant threat. So there was a catharsis. The thing that amazes me is that this was an act of violence all around, and we responded violently. And again, not to overburden the metaphor, but when you trap people and you put them in a situation where they are constantly under pressure, and then you attack them, they're going to fight back. This is why Bibi Netanyahu better stop. Because this is going to be eternal war in that region. You're killing children. You're killing women. You claim to be fighting Hamas, which you, by the way, propped up for years to take them to take out the PLO. But we're not going to talk about that today. Shout out to your tax dollars at work, United States. But when you pressure people, they fight back. The thing that I found kind of really comforting in this is that we've been talking about white folding chairs and beating the hell out of white people for 3 months, and ain't nobody said that we shouldn't be doing it. It's almost like that was a pressure valve for the ass whooping that you should get for the way black people are treated. Now, so I say that Montgomery is 60% black.
Yeah.
Steve Reed, the mayor, is black.
Yep.
The chief of police, Daryl Albert, is black. I think this charge was an attempt to pacify the white people that they are afraid of still to this day in Montgomery. But on the other side of the ledger, finally, Jim Cottrell, who's the captain of the Harriet II, said that this was racism. He said the white guys that attacked my deckhand, and he was a senior deckhand, first mate, I can't think of any other reason that they attacked him other than it's racially motivated. So I don't know whether on the 21st of November, when the brother is arraigned, he's going to have a lawyer with him. But if it goes to a jury trial, get your white captain to stand up in there and tell that jury, however they're racially composed, that the white man said it was racism, and I don't think he has anything to worry about.
I know that's right. Well, we got to call it on that note. If you got your folding chairs, if you got your picks, whatever, go ahead and get out there and show the brother some support. I'm sure he's going to have a GoFundMe or something, Chad. We got to give him some money for the inconvenience. But it has been a great night. Thank you, Dr. Carr. Thank you, Teresa Lundy. Thank you, Lauren Victoria Burke. Thank you, Roland Martin, for giving me your host chair for the evening. That's a wrap for us. Y'all go ahead and contribute. I'm sure the stuff is going to be up there. And I believe Roland will be back tomorrow. So as for me, holla.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?